Alright, so the first basic thing I'm going to discuss, the fundamental thing, is going to be the single queen checkmate. You can use like you can try to do the single rook checkmate with the queen, because since the queen goes like a rook too. But you can also do the knight shadow technique too. I'm going to show both. Both of them are very easy. The first one I will go over is the knight shadow technique. So generally speaking, when you have a single queen, you can try to do the checkmate in any corner, right? But you have to decide. And generally speaking, we want to work smart. We don't want to work too much. King is closest to this corner, so we can try to push the king towards this corner. So you move the queen to here. We're taking the L shape. And the benefit of taking this L shape is that they won't be able to come closer to the queen. Every square they have is kind of like going away from the queen. If they go to square like that, you just do Simon says, you follow the opponent's king. If they go to square like this, we do the same exact thing and we follow the opponent's king. For example, if they go to square like that, you can follow it this way too. Now, when the king goes to the corner square, this is when you stop following because it's going to lead to a stalemate. And it's time to move our king. And once we have something like this diagonal opposition, or you can go for the actual opposition, direct opposition too. You can go for this checkmate, you can go for this checkmate. All of them work. It's going to be an easy one. Now the other technique is to treat the queen like a rook, which is a little bit slower, but it also works too. So if we move the queen to here, we're kind of like making a river. We're making all these squares lava over here, so the king won't be able to pass. And it's time to move your king. We're going to take opposition. And once you have opposition, you can actually do a check. So the opponent's king will have to go back. And this is very important. Once the king goes back, guys, you don't want to move your king right in front of the opponent's king because that's going to be a stalemate. Or you don't want to go here either. So once the king goes to here, we're going to move our queen up to make a new river over here, forcing the opponent's king to go back. And then again, we take opposition. Whichever square the opponent's king moves to, you have a checkmate like this, or like that. And we're going to win the game too. The key thing is to not make any stalemate positions, because there's no way black can win this, it's just white trying to win. And those are the ideas. Alright, the next thing we will go over is ladder checkmate with the rooks. So the ladder checkmate is a very basic, very fundamental checkmate. You can replace one of the rooks with the queen too, it will work. The idea is to just use one rook to prevent the king from escaping, and then use the other rook to do the check. Now, if the opponent king comes to c8, for example, we won't be able to do this checkmate. It's not that big of a deal. There's like a bunch of different ways you can do this checkmate. I recommend like just moving the rook away to do checkmate over here. Now if they come here attacking our rook, you have to move the rook away too, and the opponent's king is now so far away from our rooks. There's no way they can prevent the checkmate. Another way you can do a checkmate in this position is do a waiting move. Since it is going to be black's turn after we move, and they have only these two squares that they can try to go to, this one being prevented by the rook, forces them to go to this square. So if you do a waiting move like rook b5 or like rook b7, you force the king to go to the side, and then you do the ladder checkmate again. And that's going to be very, very good too. For example, if your rooks were tangled up like this, and the opponent's king was nearby, again, all we gotta do is untangle the rooks. You can move one of the rooks to the side, and then we want to move the other rook up to do a check. But again, king is right there. So if the king goes to the side, we can do a check. If the king goes up by itself, guys, you want to use the other rook to make this new prison, right? If the king just goes up by itself, it's easy because we're making the squares that they can go to less and less. And if they ever go to the side, you have this check. If they go up, you prevent them again, and then this is going to be the checkmate. But for example, if they were to go to square like this, you do the check. They come here, they're attacking our rook. Again, you can protected with this, and after they go here, you can use this rook. But the easier way and the most logical way is to just move the rook the farthest you can from the opponent's king. And in the next turn, we're going to use the other rook to do this check, since this rook is guarding these squares, and this rook is not really guarding any squares. It's so far away from the king that it's time for this rook to do a check. And you want to avoid these kind of checks. The rooks are always going to work parallel to each other. So if you're using the rooks like this, you want to continue doing these checks. If you're using the rooks like this, you want to continue doing these checks. If the king goes to here, we do this check. Again, if the king comes to here, they prevent us from doing this check. We just slide the rook to the other side. We go up, king comes here, checkmate. So this is how we can use the double rooks to do this checkmate. Next, we're going to go over how to do a single rook checkmate. Alright. So single rook checkmate, there are again two techniques. I'm going to show first the technique that I learned when I was a kid. And then we're going to go over what we call the box technique. In the box technique, you are actually using the rook more. But in the regular technique, we are going to be using the rook to do the river first. So again, we have to decide which side to push the opponent's king to. There are 4 sides on the board. The king is so close to this side, so we can try to push the king up this way. When you're trying to push the king up like that, you don't want the king to go down. And a lot of people, they like to start with these checks, but the problem is we're trying to push the king up, but they can actually go down. This is not something we want them to do. So instead, we're going to move the rook to here to prevent the king from going down. Now after this move, the opponent's king might attack. Excuse me. The opponent's king might attack our rook, so you just go towards the sides. And now it's time to chase with our king. And here's the idea. Once the opponent's king comes right in front of our king, taking opposition, you can now do a check. Alright, this is the goal. Now, once the opponent's king goes up, because our king's attacking these squares, rook is checking over here, the king has to go up this way. So once the king goes up, guys, we have to move our king closer to the opponent's king. And here's the thing. You want to have opposition, but when you have opposition, you want to do the check. And if you take opposition right now, the opponent will actually move the king to one of the squares. And they get out of the opposition, right? Because of that, we're going to go to a square that the opponent might go next to take the opposition. So we have these 2 squares. Since the king might actually go towards the rook to try to attack it, it makes more sense to go towards here. And again, if they come here, we have opposition. We can do this check, forcing the king to go up. But if the king goes to here, we're just going to follow the opponent's king. And after they come here, check. And after king goes to here, again, we come here. They have now only 2 squares. If they come here, we have a checkmate. If they come here, you just chase the king. Since they're at the limit, there's no more square over there. They'll have to come back. And then we do this checkmate. Now, what if you do this check, and instead of going to this square, they go further? Now, we cannot move our king to this square, right? So you go to c6 anyway. We are taking opposition, but here's the thing. Now they have 2 squares. If they go here, we have to do what we call a waiting move, guys. You have to give the turn to the opponent, because if you just chase the opponent's king, they just escape, right? And we don't have any checkmates, and you don't want to repeat this because this will lead to a draw. So instead, we are going to do a waiting move with the rook. We're giving the turn to the opponent, just like that. So the idea is to move the rook 1 square, or you can even go a few 2. Like, it doesn't really matter. You just want to keep the rook away from the opponent's king. And now you give the turn to the black king. So if they come here, now we have this checkmate. If they come here, we have opposition, so you have this checkmate. Whenever you have the kings like this, you never want to do a check like this, because this is not going to lead to a checkmate, and you have to like repeat the whole thing again. Now we're just chasing, and after the king comes back, opposition, we want to do this checkmate. So this is like the most logical way you can do a single rook checkmate, but I'll show you guys the other technique too. So this was the starting position. So this is called the boxing technique with the rook. We're going to use the rook to create a box. For example, you can start with the same move, and after they come here, you can come here. Alright, now, we bring the king, and this is the box that the rook is making. And slowly we'll try to make the box smaller and smaller. For example, if the king comes here, you can even move your rook here, and all of a sudden, the area of the square is like much smaller. If the king comes to a square like this, or a square like this, we are not able to move the rook safely next to the king, since our king is not defending. So what you do is you bring your king too. Now again, if they come here, if we do a check, now they actually get out of that box. Now this is a new box. It's bigger than the other one, so we don't want that. So instead, you also move your king. And again, if they go to the side, you bring your rook. The box is getting smaller. If they go up, we can't move the rook up since the king will capture it. So you move your king up too. And then the next turn, we want to move the rook there. If they go here, we move the rook up. Now the box is even smaller. Now, here's the thing. If they move the king to a square like this, we actually have a bit of a pickle, because right now you can't move the rook safely, right? If you do a check, the king is escaping. If you try to move the king away from the rook, they will capture the rook. So we have to wait a little bit. Now the king has 3 squares, so if the king goes up, you move your own king, since again we can't move the rook up. If the king goes to here, you move your rook. We're making the box smaller. And again, we're going to move the king the same exact way. Since we have been moving the king this way, you want to avoid going up that way. So if the opponent's king goes to here, you move the king to here. Again, after that, it's time to move the rook. And the box is tiny. King goes up, can't move the rook up, so we move the king up. We are taking opposition. Rook is attacking these squares, king is attacking these squares. So it's only giving black 1 square left, which is going to be here. And then we can move the rook this way to do this checkmate. As you can see, this one is a little bit more tedious. Both of them are fine. You can choose whichever one you want. I like to do the other one, the river one. It's just easier. Move the rook and then try to take opposition with the king. And then once we have opposition, you want to do a check with the rook. And then you push the king all the way to the top and do that checkmate that way. Alright, so next we are going to talk about some pawn promotions. This is going to be very important because if you have only one single pawn, depending on where the pawn and your kings are, that can be a win or a draw. And you do want to win a winning position. So let's see an example like that. Okay, so if we have a position like this, the opponent's king is in front of the pawn. This is going to be a little more complicated, but if the opponent's king is not in front of the pawn, guys, if it's somewhere like here, what you want to do is you want to use what we call the square technique. So pawn is going this way. That's going to be 4 squares up, right? So you're going to make 4 squares from the pawn's diagonal towards the opponent's king. Or you can just make this invisible line and you're going to connect them. You're going to take the mirror image over here and we get this square. So here's the rule. If the opponent's king is inside this square, before you move, right, that means the opponent's king can catch your pawn. So if you just try to push your pawn up like this, without moving your king, this is going to be a draw because the opponent's king catches this way. But for example, if our pawn was somewhere like here, now the square is over here, and the opponent's king is not in the square, right? It is one square, it is one move away from being inside the square, but because they're not actually in it, you can just advance the pawn, and they are going to be 1 square short from being able to capture the pawn. But let's talk about what happens if the opponent's king is actually inside the square. Let's start with something like this. So if the opponent's king is inside the square, guys, obviously we don't want to push the pawn all the way up because they will just capture us. So we have to use our king very effectively. And these are what we call the key squares. Whenever your pawn is going up like that, you have the 3 squares in front of the pawn that we have to guard with the king. A lot of people like to start with the pawn, but if you actually start with the pawn, it's going to lead to an eventual draw. The best thing we can do is actually to take the opposition, but let's start with the draw first. So why doesn't moving the pawn work? If you move the pawn first, king comes to here, you take the opposition, right? King has 3 squares in the back. Doesn't really matter where the king goes, but this does matter. So if they come here, they are taking opposition, preventing us from going up. If they went this way, for example, if you are able to move the king this way, this will still be winning for white. But for the sake of this, let's do the most accurate moves for black to see how it becomes a draw. So black is taking opposition, preventing our king from going in. So since we can't move the king up, you might try to move the pawn. And again, they should go in front of the pawn. We take opposition, and this is a key moment. Black king has 3 squares right now. 2 of them are a win for white, but if they go to the correct location, it's going to be a draw. The only correct location for black is the middle square, because after we go in, they are the one who take opposition. If they go to the side, again, white is able to win this if they move the king up to secure the promotion square. But if they take opposition after they go to the square, once you take opposition, it's going to be a stalemate. If in this position they were to go to the one of the side squares, you are the one who takes opposition. So once they come here, we put them in a zugzwang, forcing their king to move out. And then again, you move your king up, securing this promotion square. And in the next turn, we want to advance the pawn. We get the queen. We'll do the simple knight shadow technique. So that's why you don't want to move the pawn in front of the king ever if the opponent's king is inside our pawn's square, right? It's very easy to see that the opponent's king is right in front of the pawn. So let's do the correct technique. You take opposition this way, right? If the opponent's king was over here, actually, let me change this. Edit position. If the opponent's king was actually here, you want to move the king up to take opposition this way. Going to f5 is going to be a draw, which I'm going to show after we finish this. But let's do it. So we are the one who takes opposition. We're kind of telling the opponent to move their king away, right? They don't have any pieces, so they must move the king. They have 5 squares right now. If they go up, you take opposition this way. But if they go to one of these side squares, what you want to do is you don't want to take opposition this way. Eventually, you want to move our king to either this square, or if their king is on the other side, we want to move the king to e7. Once your king is in one of these squares, we're going to be attacking these 3 squares. And we are going to secure the path for the pawn to advance. And in order to get to this square, we're going to move the king up. Again, if they take opposition this way, you can start advancing the pawn. But if they go back, now we take opposition. And again, we go to one of these golden squares, securing these 3 squares. And now we can advance the pawn. The red card is rolled. Pawn can just go up. And then we do the same technique. Alright, so let's talk about why. If the opponent's king was here, why would that make a draw? So if the king was here, guys, if you don't take opposition and instead you come here this time, they are the one who takes opposition. And because they take opposition, we can't actually surround the opponent's king, right? We want to go from the sides to go to these golden squares. And because of that, we're not able to do it. So you go to the side, they come here. We can't go. So if you push the pawn, it turns into this. And that's the problem. So instead, you start by taking opposition, forcing the kings to go to this square. If they go somewhere like this, you can go to the side to secure it here. But if they go here, you take opposition, you come here, They come here, you take opposition, and then same exact thing. The pawn is ready to promote into a queen. Alright, so when you have two kings versus a pawn like this, right now the goal is to go in with the king. So we can actually use one pawn to create this. And after the king goes, we can actually take opposition. And after the king goes to here, we're going to surround the opponent's king with this active king technique. It's forcing the king to go to the side, and then you come here. The goal is to get this pawn somehow. And after they come here, you can go either way. Generally taking opposition is just a good idea. Like keep taking opposition. And we're attacking these squares with the pawn. So the king has to go away from their pawn, right? They can't go here to defend it. So after they go, you capture this. And now you can move any of the pawns. This time, it doesn't really matter because since you have two pawns, like if they come here, you come here. And then you promote the other one. Or if you want to like not sacrifice a pawn, you can come here. And then you can push one of the pawns like that. After they come here, you're going to promote the pawn this way. We don't want to be too greedy. Like going for both pawns to promote is not something we can do all the time, right? But again, you don't want to start with a move like this because it's going to lead to the same exact thing. In which, at the end, if the king goes to the correct location, it is going to be a draw. Now, in some other positions, which is going to be similar, but let's say like the opponent's king is like on this side, they have a pawn here, we have a pawn here, and we have some pawns over here. They don't have a pawn here. Now, this is very easy to win for white because this time our pawns are so far away, guys. So if our pawns are so far away, what you can do is you can try to capture the opponent's pawn, while the opponent's king will have to guard this pawn, right? So you don't even have to like advance this pawn. So if you go this way and then they come this way, and they capture that, they're going to be too far away. Now you still have to be careful. You don't want the opponent's king to try to go through here. But right now they're too slow. And an easy way to see that is that you have the pawn square. So if they could go straight in, they will be able to stop it. But because it's because our king is right there, they won't be able to. So after they come here, guys, to be able to promote, because they can catch it. Now, generally speaking, if they're able to go in this way, you want to take opposition, so you can go like that. And this prevents the opponent's king from going in too, right? Alright. So that's going to be a great idea as well. And that's how you promote the pawn. Now there's something important that I haven't discussed, but if you have only a corner pawn, and like imagine white only had a pawn advantage like this, a corner pawn is always going to lead to a draw if the black king plays correctly, and the black king is able to go to the pawn's promotion square, always. And here's the proof. The main problem is because since it's a corner file, there's no file on the other side. So we don't have any other file to push the opponent's king to, right? If they had that square over this line, this wouldn't be like that, but it is going to be important. So if you, if they come here, you push, they come here. Now they're forcing you to move the king. Wherever the king goes, it's going to be one kind of a draw. If you come here, it's a stalemate. If you come here, they capture your pawn, it's insufficient material draw. So that's going to be the reason for the draw. Now, as we were saying before, it matters where the black king goes, right? But that only matters when it's not a corner file pawn. So if you have a pawn that is on like the B, C, D, E, F, G, then it matters where the king goes. But if it's a corner file like H or A, then it doesn't really matter which square the king goes, because if they go here, even though we're taking opposition, there's no square on the side, so it's a stalemate. If the king were to go to this square, it's the same thing. Now wherever the king goes, it is going to be one type of draw. So keep that in mind. Whenever you have a corner file pawn, it is going to be a draw. Now, the only time it is not a draw is if the opponent's king is far away. Like if the opponent's king is somewhere like here, we do want to advance the pawn to become a queen. But again, we don't want the opponent's king to go to this square. So we would actually start by taking opposition. And this is one of the key puzzles that Chess.com asks in Puzzle Rush 2. So if they come here, they still want to go in. And we don't want to move the pawn because they will go through this crack. So you take the opposition to prevent the king from going in. If they come here, they still have one last square that they want to go to. So you move the king, and we're guarding all of the squares. And now you might be thinking, oh, what if they try to attack our pawn, right? But they're going to be too slow. And here's the idea. So they're attacking, but once we advance the pawn, our king is defending. So we're going to promote the pawn again in a second. Alright, so that's how you can promote a corner file pawn if the opponent's king is not able to block the promotion square. Alright, okay, we're going to do one last example. Alright, let's do that. For example, let's say our king is too far away. And the pawns are in the position like this. So, if anybody's going to win, it's definitely going to be white, since black is 0 pawns, 0 pieces besides the king. So all we gotta do is not lose the pawns, right? Generally speaking, in a position like this, you want to bring your king closer. Because in the endgame, even though king is generally useless, in the endgame it really shines. So we're going to move the king closer. If they don't attack any of the pawns, you just bring your king closer and then we will start advancing. But if they start attacking one of the pawns, this is important because we want to move our king fast enough, right? And if they capture this, you want to calculate if you can get to the pawn close fast enough, right? Like you come here, they capture, you come here, they come here, you come here. So this is going to be winning again. After they come here, you move your king. After they come here, you move your king. And now we can start moving the pawn. Opposition technique. We want to go to this square or this square. And now we can start moving the pawn. But if you want to do something a little bit different, if they move the king to here, again, like moving the king as we just saw works, but you can also advance the other pawn. Because we are kind of like making a little shield like this, preventing the opponent's king from attacking the c pawn, right? So if they were to capture the a pawn, this is important, something to keep in mind. If a king tries to attack a pawn from the back, it usually can never catch it, because it's just too slow. And now the pawn becomes a queen. So that is a technique too. Now you might be wondering, what if they don't capture this, right? Then they have to come back, and then we move the king too. If we advance one of the pawns, now this is going to be very bad, because we lose both of the pawns. So we're not going to move any of the pawns. Instead, it's time to bring the king closer. Now if they come here, we can't come in time, so it's not a problem. But you can advance the pawn, and it's as if we moved everything up one square, right? It's the same exact position. Our king is a little bit closer. Pawns are closer to the promotion squares. That's even better. And again, it's the same exact thing. We want to move the king closer. If they attack one of the pawns, you move the pawn up. Make that little force field, preventing the king from coming in. And once our king is close enough, we will promote. Like if they come back, you come here. You bring your king. And then we do the same thing. Now, this time, guys, it's important because we're just talking about this, right? If the opponent's king goes to the correct square, this is going to be a draw. But because you have an extra pawn, it's not going to be a draw. So you do this check, they come here. If we didn't have this pawn, we would be forced to move the king to somewhere where it would make a draw. But now you can give the turn to the opponent. You can do a waiting move by advancing this pawn. And after they come here, you can move the king to promote this. Or you can also try to promote the a-file pawn too. And then you can promote the other one too. And white is super winning. But again, this is a great plan on moving our king in tandem with the pawns. Right, we're moving the pawns up too if the opponent doesn't capture one of them. Alright, so these are the fundamentals I wanted to go over in the endgame.